transfer portal is open. We got about a 2-week window here, so if you're going to get moving, you kind of have to get your affairs in order pretty quickly. Actually, before we even start, I got several names to talk to you about. Josh DeBerry, because he decided to move today close to the show, he gets a post-it pop, probably the first one in his career. He's a corner, 5'11", 177. He's a grad transfer, was from Boston College. He is now at Texas A&M. All-ACC second team 2 years ago, two-time ACC honorable mention. Probably going to be a slot corner for him, so we see already. We're going to talk about A&M later in the show. We see already there's a piece that they just added that we could not have known about even when we watched the spring game and overreacted to it, according to some the other day. Because, you know, if you watch a spring game and mention it, that's overreacting. So there you go. There's one name that's already moved today. We've got others. Caleb Etienne. Remember, we talked about him the other night. That was the one I told you there was going to be a really, really hot market for. He was the starting left tackle at Oklahoma State last year. He started all 13 games, one of only two players at Oklahoma State to start all 13 games. 6'7", 330. Again, we're talking a starting Power 5 offensive tackle, left tackle. So I'm sitting here thinking to myself, it would be in his best interest to draw this process out a little. And then all of a sudden, 8 hours later, he's committed to Brigham Young. Big 12 member institution, Brigham Young, mind you. And so that didn't last very long, immunity. And then producer Jesse walks into my office and he says, I found something. And I say, what is it, Jesse? And he says, do you promise to paper pop it? And I say, just tell me. Braden Kearsley was at Oklahoma State. He is now a coach at Brigham Young. We think he may have had something to do with this. At the very least, there was some familiarity there. Certainly, it seems like this was ironed out before he was ever in the portal. At least that's the way it seems. I don't speak negatively about such things because it's happening everywhere. So Caleb Etienne, we thought, would be a guy who sort of drug the process out a little bit. Nope. And therefore, we have one less starting offensive tackle with any kind of experience, much less starting experience in the portal. Trill Carter's in the portal. Actually, no, he's not, because another guy has already moved. Trill Carter, 6'2", 300-pound defensive tackle from Minnesota. He's headed to the Lone Star State, but he's headed to Texas. He had visited Arkansas, Illinois, Ohio State. He just came out and shot straight with you. He said, it's too cold in the Big Ten. I'm tired of it. I don't like it. It's not for me. And therefore, I'm headed to warmer weather, literally. So he's headed to Texas. All Big Ten honorable mention. 2 years ago, actually, this was last year, right, Jesse? These snap counts? This was last year. Yeah, 545 snaps. That was the 8th most by an interior defensive lineman in the entire Big Ten. So you've got experience there. Now, look, if you're a Texas fan, you know how this works. He comes in, and it's not automatically that we're saying, oh, great, we got a plug-and-play defensive lineman. It may be that he's rotational, he's first two-down guy, or it could just be that you look at him and you don't even have to get that specific. You just say, we got a guy named Trill. That's always a win. And then he's going to be a depth provider, and that also is a win. So the classic win, because I got to say his name on air. Brock Vandergriff, not in the portal. I don't want to alarm anyone, at least as of last hour. Brock Vandergriff is not in the portal yet. That is a former 5-star quarterback at Georgia. That was a guy you saw in the G-Day game, the spring game the other day, which we also overreacted to. I drip with sarcasm when I say that. Brock Vandergriff had some things to say after the G-Day game. So it's pretty clear to me and everyone else who knows anything about Georgia football, Carson Beck's going to be the starting quarterback there unless something just catastrophic were to happen to him. Where does that leave Brock Vandergriff? Brock Vandergriff's not a true freshman. He's been there a couple of years. Beck, I said he was 3 years in the other day. He's 4 years in. You know, Beck, if he lights it up this year, could be one of those one-and-done quarterbacks, and you say, he can't leave yet, and all of a sudden you remember, oh, yeah, he can. He's been here forever. So Brock Vandergriff, the other day after the spring game, he said, in reference to what his future holds, because it's pretty clear what the starting order is, he's not sure, he's got some praying to do, and the plan is to just take it day by day. Most of us would draw from that. He's heavily thinking about heading into the portal, but he hasn't, at least that we know of, as of yet. Like I said, former 5-star quarterback, 2021 cycle, not in there yet. I can't emphasize that enough. Not in there yet. He cannot transfer within the SEC without sitting out a year. So I know, first and foremost, There are folks at Florida or, a number of Auburn. There are folks who are looking around saying, we've got to add some quarterback depth. Where can we go? Well, you can't go that way because Greg Sankey's not going to let you go that way. So there are rules. There are rules against such things. And this is college football. We honor rules, don't we? So he may transfer. It's just if he does and he wants to be immediately eligible to play, he's going to have to go outside the conference. Or there is this other scenario. I heard there's this dude playing for the Eagles that got a lot of money the other day. Once upon a time, he just stayed. He stayed at his college. So many different ways to skin the old cat there. What about Gary Bryant? Jesse's cat's name is Gary. General rule of thumb around the office is we're not the biggest fan of Gary's. We like Trill, not the biggest fan of Gary's, but it's a case-by-case thing. So we make an exception. Probably got plenty of Garys watching the show. So case by case, we will accept you guys. Gary Bryant, though, was a USC wide receiver, top 50 player in the 2020 cycle, 5'11", 180. He has set a commitment date. So in the portal, he set a commitment date. Now, Greg Biggins, one of our West Coast recruiting insiders all over this thing, he's crystal balled him to Oregon. So as it stands now, Oregon looks like the betting favorite to land Gary Bryant. Arizona in there, Miami, A&M, UCLA, Oregon. 580 yards receiving in 2021, 7 touchdowns. And then last year, he redshirted. Remember, that's the year Lincoln Riley came in and brought half the country with him. And so Gary Bryant was just sort of overtaken on the depth chart. Doesn't mean he's a bad player. Talked to you the other night about a couple of guys from Texas, former 4-star guys, big speed guys that there just isn't enough room for because you only got one football to throw around. And so Gary Bryant, a victim maybe of some roster additions there, he could very well go up the coast and be a factor in determining the Pac-12 championship picture this year. So let's keep an eye on that. Also, I did a lot of talking with coaches yesterday, a lot of talking. It's a miracle I still have my voice, being that I've been battling allergies and spent an inordinate amount of time on the phone. Then talked to management last night for another 90 minutes for unrelated reasons. I'm going to give you some word on the street. What are the folks behind the scenes talking about? Well, the thing that keeps getting relayed to me is the price tags around NIL that are happening in the recruiting process pale in comparison to the NIL dollars that are being tossed around in the what they're calling the retention market. So a lot of the verbiage that has been relayed to me is you got the acquisition market, that's going in recruiting kids out of high school. Then you got the retention market, and that's trying to keep the guys that are currently on your roster. Right now, and this is the way it should be, if we're being honest with ourselves, the way it looks like it's shaken out is you are spending less and less on acquiring high school talent because they're unproven, and then you're spending more and more on trying to keep the players that are proven on your roster, or at least the players you know more about. Now, if you have trouble buying that, I'm not telling you no one's spending any money on high school players. I'm saying disproportionately the bigger money is being paid to, as it should be, players who have proven a little something at the college level. Go back to last December, a few months ago. Remember how I told you every coach I spoke with said that the transfer portal in December was going to be insane? And I kept hammering that because people kept telling me that. And then the portal opened, and it came and went, and it closed, and it was fairly active. But it was not the tsunami of frontline talent on the move that everyone expected. Let me tell you what happened. The retention market took care of it. I know of several high-profile players whose universities got out in front of them entering the transfer portal and ponied up, to use a Meemaw phrase, to keep their guys on campus. If we're going to have that kind of activity in college football, that's actually the way it should work. Go prove something, and then we'll give you the money. And the market will set itself and blah, 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 yada, 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 et cetera, et cetera. I think that's about all I can use. So, yeah, that's what's happening right now. That's what's going on behind the scenes. The portal really underwhelmed people in December because of that very reason. So many coaches were fearful of it. So many folks were terrified of it that their collectives got out in front of it and said, all right, hey, wait, where are you going? Before you step out there, could we talk about this? And some of you still have quarterbacks right now. Some of you have returning starters at that very high-profile position because your collectives stepped up. And some of them you know about, and some of them you don't know about. And it doesn't matter because all's well that ends well at the end of the day.